The partial government shutdown dragged into its 12th day today. President Trump made clear he is not backing down on his demand that Congress fund a wall on the border with Mexico. The president made his case at his first cabinet meeting of the new year. He opened the 1.5-hour meeting claiming he would work with Democrats before digging in on the issue of wall funding.
Is there a number below $5 billion that you might be willing to accept in order to reopen the government and get this thing moving forward?
Well, I'd rather not say it. Could we do it for a little bit less? It's so insignificant compared to what we're talking about. The $5.6 billion approved by the House is such a small amount compared to the level of the problem.
How long do you think the government's going to stay partially shut down?
Could be a long time, or it could be quickly. Could be a long time.
How long are you willing to keep the government shut down then in order to get it?
As long as it takes.
Trump reiterated his demand that Congress provide funding, despite writing on Twitter this morning, Mexico is paying for the wall through the USMCA trade deal. And while the president gave few details on how he plans to end the impasse, he accused Democrats of playing politics.
We're in the shutdown because of the fact that the Democrats are looking to 2020. They think they're not going to win the election. I guess a lot of signs point to the fact that they're not going to win the election. I hope they're not going to win the election. But they view this as an election point for them. I'm not thinking about the politics. I'm thinking about what's right and what's wrong. And we need a physical barrier.
Trump spent much of New Year's Day slamming Democrats on Twitter because they allocated, quote, no money for a new wall. He also said they do not care about open borders. He later seemed to shift tactics, writing, quote, border security and the wall thing and shutdown is not where Nancy Pelosi wanted to start her tenure as Speaker. Let's make a deal. This afternoon, Trump hosted Democratic leader Pelosi along with top congressional leaders from both parties in the White House Situation Room for what the administration called a briefing on the border wall and border security with Homeland Security officials. This comes as Democrats prepare to take control of the House tomorrow with Pelosi as the presumptive House Speaker. Late today, Pelosi said the House plans to bring up legislation to open up the government tomorrow and join Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer in blaming the president for the standoff.
We're asking the president to open up government. We are giving him a Republican path to do that. Why would he not do it?
The bottom line is very simple. At our last meeting, the president said, I am going to shut the government down. They are now feeling the heat. It is not helping the president. It is not helping the Republicans to be the owners of this shutdown. Today, we gave them an opportunity to get out of that.
But moments later, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell told reporters at the Capitol the Senate would not take up the bill that House Democrats plan to pass. For more, I'm joined now by New York Democratic Congressman Adriano Espaillat. Susan Page is Washington Bureau Chief for USA Today. And Charlie Sykes is an MSNBC contributor. Congressman, I'll start with you. Yes, we are in the final hours of 8 years of Republican rule of the House. Tomorrow, your party takes over, supposedly going to put a plan on the floor, vote for it. Your leader, the incoming Speaker, says you have the votes to pass it that would reopen the government. She says this would be a Republican path. Her words we just played there, a Republican path to reopening the government. What does that mean? What do you plan to pass tomorrow?
Well, that means that this particular deal, this particular piece of legislation, both pieces, were already approved by the Senate almost unanimously. And so now we're going back. We feel that government should open. There should be no greater responsibility for us than to bring ease to 800,000, close to 1 million Americans that are hurting by this Trump shutdown. So we're doing what they ask us to do, which is to lead, to govern.
Okay, so to reopen the government, but specifically when it comes to the issue of the border, when it comes to money, what kind of money are we talking about here? What kind of money would this money go to? Is it a wall? Is it fencing? What do you have in this plan?
The second piece of legislation provides for a CR, a continuing resolution that up to February 8th, and that will give us plenty of time to talk about border security. Now, in the past, both the Senate and the House have passed bipartisan legislation that provides relief for Dreamers, for TPS recipients, and border security. every single time the president has shut it down.
That's the question to me there, because there has been in the background here, and sometimes this spills over a little bit, but some semantic questions here, because the president says a wall, other times he says fence, steel, slat, fence. The terminology is mixed here. Where is the line? You call a wall immoral. What short of a wall, though, in terms of border security, are you willing to accept here?
It seems to me that the president is his way or the highway. And it is his interpretation of what the wall is, which seems to shift every single day. So this is very difficult to negotiate with someone that shifts his position on a daily basis. Now, we can work with ports of entry. No one disagrees that we should stop human trafficking, that we should stop drugs and illegal arms from coming from our ports of entry. I think that should be a high priority for government. But the best priority, the most important thing that we could do right now is to end the Trump shutdown and bring back relief to 800,000 Americans. They're asking for it.
All right. Well, in his remarks today, President Trump compared his proposed border wall to former President Barack Obama's home and to the Vatican.
There's a reason why politicians and wealthy people build walls around their houses and their compounds. President Obama recently built a wall around his compound. There's a reason for it, and I don't blame them. When they say the wall's immoral, well, then you got to do something about the Vatican, because the Vatican has the biggest wall of them all.
Well, Susan Page, again, this question here of what the president's bottom line is. He said today, $5.6 billion. That's what he wants right here. We have reporting that his vice president, Mike Pence, was offering behind the scenes about $2.5 billion. He seemed to wave that off today. You've got Democrats, as we're just talking about with the congressman here, poised to pass money for border security tomorrow. It looks like it's going nowhere further than the House. But the president at other times has said that term wall has suggested it might be a little flexible. Do we know exactly where the bottom line here is in terms of negotiating from the White House's standpoint?
Moved away from compromise. You know, there was originally, as the congressman was saying, a short-term continuing resolution to keep the government open until February 8th, that the president had indicated he was willing to sign, and he backed away from it, which is the reason that the House, the Republican-controlled House, refused to bring that up, and we ended up in a shutdown. Today, he sounded like he had never met Mike Pence. Who is this Mike Pence who was suggesting $2.5 billion would be an acceptable number? So the president has moved toward a harder line, not toward a softer one, as the shutdown has extended now into its 12th day. And it's not clear at what point he might be willing to get off his current stance, which is quite unyielding, saying he will not agree to any kind of deal that does not have wall funding, while Nancy Pelosi said again today she will not agree to any deal that includes wall funding. So there is no grounds there at the moment for compromise.
Yeah, and Charlie Sykes, just in terms of the president's posture on this, we hear so often he's thinking of that base that elected him, that Trump base. What is their bottom line on this? Is it definitely $5.6 billion? Is it a concrete wall along the border that has to be there in some form by 2020? Is it more? You had Lindsey Graham the other day saying, no, the wall's metaphorical. Is it just the idea that he's showing toughness here? Is there a bottom line you can discern from the Trump base that he's apparently listening to here?
Well, I mean, the first thing to note is, number one, the president said Mexico is going to pay for this wall. Number two, remember when, I'm old enough to remember when Republicans, if they were going to shut down the government, at least claimed it was they were fiscally conservative. This is a very costly boondoggle. But in terms of the bottom line, look, Donald Trump is enjoying this right now. He's talking about something that he's comfortable with. He has a foil now with the Democrats to blame for all of this. And he hasn't given himself an on-ramp. I mean, really, as long as Ann Coulter and Rush Limbaugh are pushing for the wall, I don't see the way out of it. Other people have tried to suggest that it was a metaphor, a soft landing. And the president comes back and says, no, I'm actually talking about this wall. Why the wall? Well, because this was the line that he uses in the rallies. It's simple. Of course, it's ineffective. It's crude, but it is a great talking point for the president. So I don't know what his exit strategy is here. The Democrats are not going to be giving him any money for the wall. He insists that the wall is not a metaphor. So I think the government's going to be shut down for a very long time.
On New Year's Eve, meanwhile, President Trump made a point of noting that he was still in Washington amid the stalemate.
Well, I'm at the White House working. You're out there partying tonight, but I don't blame you. Enjoy yourselves. We're going to have a great year. Have a really, really happy New Year.
And at today's cabinet meeting, Trump repeatedly referenced his time in Washington in an attempt to cast doubt on his Democratic counterparts.
I was here on Christmas evening. I was all by myself in the White House. It's a big, big house, except for all the guys out on the lawn with machine guns. I was hoping that maybe somebody would come back and negotiate, but they didn't do that. And that's okay. I was lonely over the weekend and over the last, I was in Washington hoping that we'd see a little action. I'd get a call and say, let's get together and let's work hard. But they chose Hawaii over Washington.
Congressman, you had the president today, too, also seeming to suggest in some of these expansive comments here, this could go on for a while. You just heard Charlie Sykes say a second ago he's starting to feel the same. Mitch McConnell's already said you pass this out of the House tomorrow, it's going nowhere in the Senate. How long do you think this is going to last?
Well, I hope that it doesn't go too long. The American people want a resolution to this. I think the world is looking at us as being dysfunctional. There has to be a middle ground. I think we're providing that. We're providing two pieces of legislation that were already approved by the other branch of government. We are an independent branch of government, duly elected, and we plan to exercise our duties.
Again, I'm trying to see if there does end up being some kind of almost semantic-based common ground that gets both sides out of this. And I guess I keep coming back to this term fencing. You as Democrats are comfortable with some kind of money going to fencing? Is that correct?
This is not about semantics. I think most experts seem to agree that the wall will not work. In fact, it is a symbol of the past. It shouldn't be a symbol of the future for this great nation of ours. And I think that we should find ways to bring back the American people to work, to open government again. 800,000 Americans.
But again, we have this standoff here. The reason I'm pressing this is because the president has, and it's been a few days now, but he put this idea out there of steel slat fence. And I hear the position from Democrats is a wall is an absolute non-starter. No money, not a penny for a wall, $0. I got that. But I also see you're putting money out there for border security, and the word fencing does enter into it. Is there room for some common ground there with him on that, a compromise that would involve fencing of some sort?
I would not support a wall or fencing. A rose is a rose by any other name. I would support some level of border security that makes sense, that's humane, that will stop this humanitarian crisis from emerging at the border.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.